June 27, 1997, Chicago, O'Hare International Airport. Federal agents surrounded a 42-year-old man stepping off a flight from Zimbabwe. He was composed, well-dressed, unremarkable, just another passenger returning home after years abroad. But for 16 years he had moved from hospital to hospital, state to state, and across continents, leaving behind a pattern of sudden unexplained deaths. His name was Michael Swango, a licensed physician trusted by patients and institutions. Investigators believed he had killed dozens, perhaps as many as 60, not through error, not through incompetence, but through deliberate calculated poisoning. Vulnerable patients, people who believed the white coat meant safety, became silent entries in hospital charts. He earned a name whispered in corridors, Dr. Death. And every system designed to stop him failed at every turn. When the handcuffs closed, Michael Swango disappeared into the federal prison system, but the questions never stopped. Prosecutors would eventually uncover a case so disturbing that his punishment would ignite debate around the world. He received 3 consecutive life sentences without parole for murdering patients at a Veterans Affairs hospital, and he confessed to killing a 19-year-old woman years earlier. The judge made one thing clear: Michael Swango would never walk free. Many believe execution would have been justice, that keeping a medical serial killer alive is mercy, that prison is an easy way out. But what most people misunderstand is what a sentence with no end truly means. Life without parole is not delayed freedom. It is endless consequence. And by the end of this video, you will understand why Michael Swango's existence behind bars may be a fate far worse than death itself. Tell me in the comments whether you agree or disagree. But first, you need to see where they sent him, how he lives inside the most secure prison in America, and why that decision sealed his fate forever. This story is not just about a killer doctor. It is about silence, negligence, and a system that chose convenience over truth and allowed a predator to keep wearing a white coat until justice caught him forever. To understand how a trusted physician became one of the most dangerous serial killers in modern medical history, you have to go back to the beginning, to the moments when the warning signs were visible but ignored. Michael Joseph Swango was born on October 21, 1954 in Tacoma, Washington. He was the second of 3 sons raised in what appeared, from the outside, to be a stable American military family. His father, John Virgil Swango, was a Vietnam veteran and an Army officer who returned from war with unresolved trauma, alcoholism, and unpredictable violent tendencies. The household was tense, volatile, and emotionally distant. But on paper, the family looked normal. No one suspected anything extraordinary was forming inside that quiet boy's mind. Michael Swango was intelligent, disciplined, and socially unremarkable. He performed exceptionally in school and graduated as valedictorian of his high school class in Quincy, Illinois. He attended Quincy University, studying chemistry and biology, graduating summa cum laude. He enlisted in the United States Marine Corps and received an honorable discharge. His academic record was flawless. His background was clean. His future looked limitless. He was exactly the kind of candidate medical schools wanted. But beneath the achievements, there were disturbing details no one thought to investigate. As a child and teenager, Swango kept scrapbooks filled with newspaper clippings about disasters and violent deaths. Plane crashes, car wrecks, murders, tragedies that horrified others fascinated him. He studied them obsessively. He cataloged them. He preserved them. This was not curiosity. This was fixation. But it never appeared in any transcript, recommendation letter, or psychological evaluation. In 1979, Swango enrolled at Southern Illinois University School of Medicine. This was where the first documented red flags appeared. He was not an exceptional medical student. His attendance was erratic. His clinical performance was average. But what unsettled classmates and faculty was his behavior. He showed an unusual interest in dying patients. Not in saving them, in watching them. Students observed that patients seemed to deteriorate or die more frequently when Swango was on rotation. The pattern was noticeable enough that classmates gave him a nickname, "Oh Swango," a dark reference to James Bond's License to Kill. It was meant as gallows humor among exhausted medical students. But the pattern was real. Despite concerns from peers and faculty, Swango was allowed to graduate in 1983. A suspected predator was handed a medical degree and released into the healthcare system. No investigation. No intervention. No safeguards. In the summer of 1983, Michael Swango began his residency at Ohio State University Medical Center, one of the largest teaching hospitals in the United States. This was where his first confirmed murder occurred. Within months, nurses began noticing alarming patterns. Patients who had been stable suddenly crashed. Cardiac arrests with no medical explanation. Rapid deteriorations that defied clinical logic. And one detail kept appearing in every case. Dr. Michael Swango had been the last person to treat the patient. Nurses began tracking cases quietly. They recorded which patients Swango treated, when he entered rooms, what happened afterward. The pattern was undeniable. Mortality rates increased when Swango was on duty. When he was not, outcomes normalized. Residents reported seeing Swango inject patients without clear medical justification. He would enter a room alone, administer something, and leave. Shortly afterward, the patient would deteriorate. One case stood out. Cynthia and McGee. She was 19 years old, a gymnast, young, healthy, and recovering from a routine procedure. There was no reason to expect anything but a full recovery. Then Michael Swango treated her. Within hours, she was dead. No underlying condition, no medical explanation, no warning signs. She simply stopped living after Swango entered her room. The nurses knew. The residents suspected. The evidence was mounting. An Ohio State University Medical Center made a decision. In 1984, they terminated Swango's residency contract. They quietly removed him from the program. But they did not report him to law enforcement. They did not notify licensing boards. They did not warn other hospitals. They did not contact Cynthia McGee's family. They did nothing to prevent him from treating patients elsewhere. A 19-year-old woman was dead. And the institution that could have stopped him chose silence. Swango walked out of Ohio State without charges, without investigation, free to practice medicine anywhere. And his next crimes would be even more blatant. After leaving Ohio State, Michael Swango did not disappear. He simply adapted. In 1984, he began working as a paramedic for the Quincy Fire Department in Illinois. This was supposed to be a fresh start. Instead, it became another hunting ground. Coworkers quickly noticed something was wrong. Several paramedics became violently ill after eating meals Swango prepared. They experienced nausea, vomiting, and severe neurological symptoms. One coworker nearly died. Toxicology later revealed arsenic poisoning. Swango was arrested in 1986 and charged with aggravated battery. He served less than 2 years in prison and was released on parole. The justice system treated the case as a workplace poisoning incident, not a warning of a serial killer physician. His medical license was suspended but not permanently revoked. Once again, the system gave him a path back. By the late 1980s, Swango was determined to reclaim his identity as a doctor. He applied to multiple residency programs, lying on applications and omitting his criminal record. Shockingly, he was accepted into a psychiatry residency at Stony Brook University in New York in 1989. Administrators either failed to check his background or chose to ignore red flags. Within months, patients began dying unexpectedly again. Nurses observed unexplained cardiac arrests and respiratory failures linked to Swango's shifts. Hospital officials quietly terminated him. No criminal investigation followed. Swango moved again, this time to South Dakota, then New York, then the Caribbean. He used fake references, altered documents, and sympathetic administrators who believed in rehabilitation. In 1994, he secured a job at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Long Island. This was where the body count accelerated. Terminally ill veterans and stable patients alike began dying after contact with Swango. Medical staff reported odd behavior, missing medications, and tampered 4 lines. Internal investigations were slow, fragmented, and cautious. Hospitals feared lawsuits, reputational damage, and public panic. So they chose silence. Again, in 1995, Swango left the United States. He reinvented himself as an international physician, working in Saudi Arabia and Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, he treated patients in rural hospitals with limited oversight. Doctors there noticed sudden unexplained deaths, particularly among patients treated by Swango. Some colleagues suspected poisoning but lacked resources to investigate. Swango thrived in environments with weak regulatory systems and desperate need for medical staff. He was a perfect predator in broken systems. His downfall began when American authorities finally connected patterns across states and countries. Investigators uncovered falsified documents, suspicious deaths, and a consistent trail following Swango's career. In 1997, he was arrested at Chicago O'Hare Airport upon returning from Zimbabwe. This time, the system could not look away. Federal prosecutors charged him with multiple counts of fraud, lying on medical applications, and later murder. He eventually pleaded guilty to killing 3 patients at a Veterans Affairs hospital. He admitted to additional deaths, but the full number will never be known. When sentencing came, the judge issued 3 consecutive life sentences without parole. No chance of release. No parole hearings. No redemption arc. Swango would die behind bars. The public saw it as justice. But what followed was not a simple punishment. It was a lifetime inside one of the most controlled environments on Earth. Isolation, routine, surveillance, and the slow erosion of identity. This was not a dramatic execution. It was decades of psychological confinement. Swango was transferred through several federal facilities before landing in high-security institutions designed to contain the most dangerous offenders. His days became structured down to the minute. Wake-up counts, meal counts, work assignments, limited contact with other inmates, no medical practice, no authority, no white coat. The identity he built his life around was erased. For a man obsessed with control over life and death, prison removed every ounce of power. He would spend years surrounded by other violent offenders, some of whom knew exactly who he was. In prison culture, harming the vulnerable is often despised. Swango was a doctor who killed patients. That label follows him forever. Protective custody, restricted movement, constant monitoring, not freedom, not death, something slower and more consuming. Every appeal was denied. Every parole possibility non-existent. He will age in a concrete cell, watching his mind and body deteriorate with no end date. The system that once failed to stop him now ensures he cannot escape the consequences of what he did. But the question remains, is this justice, or something designed to be worse than death? He will wake up every day knowing there is no release date, no transformation story, no final chapter. Just repetition, just time, just memory. For someone who sought significance through death, this is a quiet, endless anonymity. And for many, that is the true sentence. History will debate his guilt and numbers, but prison will never debate his presence. It will simply keep him there. By the time Michael Swango was placed into the federal prison system, his identity as a physician had already been erased. No hospital corridors, no patients, no authority, no admiration. The man who once controlled life and death with a syringe now lived under constant surveillance, stripped of every symbol of power he had built his life around. Federal prison is not designed for redemption stories. It is designed for containment, routine, and psychological erosion. Swango's day began with counts, guards verifying that he still existed. Breakfast trays passed through metal slots, limited movement through sterile hallways, cameras watching every step, conversations monitored, privacy eliminated. For someone who thrived on secrecy and control, prison is the inversion of everything he desired. In high-security facilities, inmates are reduced to numbers and schedules. You move when told. You eat what is given. You sleep when lights go out. You speak when permitted. There are no spontaneous decisions. No autonomy. No chance to rewrite your narrative. Swango could no longer reinvent himself with new resumes, fake references, and fresh institutions. His past followed him everywhere, documented in federal records and known by staff and inmates alike. The psychological weight of a life sentence without parole is different from death row. Death row has an endpoint, however uncertain. Life without parole has none. The calendar becomes meaningless. Years blend into decades. Hope becomes an abstract concept rather than a plan. Swango will never stand before a parole board. He will never argue for release. He will never walk outside without restraints. His life is a closed system with no exit. Inside prison, identity is everything. And Swango's identity is one of the worst labels imaginable. A doctor who poisoned patients. A man who exploited trust, vulnerability, and authority. Among inmates, crimes against the helpless carry their own stigma. That means constant tension, constant risk, protective housing, isolation from the general population, long hours alone with nothing but memory and imagination. Isolation is not cinematic. It is repetitive. Concrete walls, fluorescent lights, steel doors, silence punctuated by institutional noise. Over time, the mind begins to turn inward. Regret, justification, denial, and obsession cycle endlessly. There is no distraction large enough to erase decades of what he did. There is only time. Endless, uninterrupted time. Swango once collected stories of disasters and deaths as a child. Now he lives inside a system that studies him as a case study in medical ethics failures and institutional negligence. He became a symbol of how healthcare systems failed to communicate, failed to report, failed to protect patients. Universities, hospitals, licensing boards, and governments all played a role in allowing him to continue practicing medicine long after warning signs were undeniable. His existence is now a permanent indictment of those systems. For someone driven by notoriety, this is a twisted form of immortality. But prison strips notoriety of glamour. It reduces it to paperwork and surveillance logs. His name appears in research papers, documentaries, and court transcripts. But inside prison, he is just another inmate. Another body counted each morning and night. Another file in a cabinet. As he ages, the physical decline will mirror the psychological one. Medical care inside prison is minimal, bureaucratic, and slow. Chronic conditions will develop. Mobility will fade. Memory will degrade. And unlike his victims, he will not die suddenly. He will fade slowly, watched by guards who see him as a number, and by a system that once empowered him but now confines him. He will never hold a medical instrument again. Never make a diagnosis. Never feel the authority of a white coat. The identity he spent his entire life constructing is gone forever. What remains is a man forced to confront the consequences of his actions without distraction or escape. Every day, he will know that this is permanent. No plea bargain can change it. No appeal can shorten it. No public sympathy can soften it. His story is closed, but his consciousness continues. That is the essence of a sentence many consider worse than death. The death penalty ends consciousness. Life without parole extends it indefinitely. It forces memory to coexist with consequence. It forces identity to dissolve under institutional control. It forces time to become the punishment itself. And for Michael Swango, a man who once sought power through death, the ultimate irony is that his punishment is life. Not life as freedom, not life as purpose, life as confinement, life as repetition, life as an endless reminder of what he did and what he lost. This is the existence that awaits him every morning. A calendar without an end. A story without redemption. A sentence designed not to kill the body, but to slowly dismantle the self. By the time Michael Swango fades into old age inside federal prison, most of the world will have forgotten his face. Headlines fade. Documentaries get replaced. New crimes dominate attention. But his sentence will not change. His environment will not change. His reality will not change. This is the nature of a whole life sentence. It is not dramatic. It is not cinematic. It is not a single moment of justice. It is decades of quiet, controlled existence inside a system built to remove individuality. Every day is structured. Every movement recorded. Every interaction regulated. The man who once slipped through institutions across continents now exists in the most controlled environment possible. In court, the judge was clear. Michael Swango would die in prison. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. His body would be carried out of a federal facility decades after his crimes, long after the families of his victims had lived entire lifetimes without closure. That was the sentence. That was the calculation. Supporters of the death penalty argue that execution would have been faster, more humane, more definitive. Critics argue that life without parole is the harsher punishment, a sentence designed to stretch suffering across time. Swango's case sits at the center of that debate. A man who abused the ultimate trust, a doctor who weaponized medicine, a system that failed repeatedly to stop him. The irony is that prison gives him what he denied others: time. His victims did not get decades to reflect, age, regret, or rationalize. They died suddenly, without warning, without choice. Swango gets to experience every stage of life that they lost. He gets to grow old, to feel pain, to remember, to exist. But existence inside prison is not life as most people understand it. There are no spontaneous choices, no privacy, no future plans beyond survival. There is only routine, surveillance, and memory. It is a slow dismantling of identity, a reduction from physician to inmate, from authority to observation, from control to compliance. For someone obsessed with death, this may be the ultimate contradiction. He does not control death anymore. He waits for it. He does not decide when it happens. He experiences time until it arrives. The power he once felt has been inverted into helplessness. The institutions that failed to stop him now preserve him. Federal prisons keep him alive, medically monitored, fed, sheltered, and supervised. The system that once ignored warning signs now ensures he cannot harm anyone again. It also ensures he cannot escape his own memory. Years will pass. Fellow inmates will be transferred, released, or die. Guards will retire. Administrations will change. Policies will evolve. But Swango will remain. His sentence is not tied to political shifts or social movements. It is fixed, immutable, absolute. He will watch the world change through television screens and newspapers. Technology advances. Generations rise and fall. Meanwhile, his physical environment remains constant. Concrete, steel, schedules, counts, silence. This is what many people fail to understand when they say life in prison is the easy way out. There is no climax, no closure, no final scene, just continuation, just repetition, just a mind aging inside a body confined by law. Some believe this is justice. Others believe it is cruelty disguised as morality. The debate will continue long after Swango is gone. But for him, the debate is irrelevant. His reality is settled. His story outside prison is finished. Inside prison, it continues until biology ends it. And that raises the question at the center of this case. Is a lifetime of controlled existence, stripped of identity, autonomy, and future, truly worse than death? Or is death the ultimate mercy for someone who spent his life delivering it to others? Michael Swango will never answer that question publicly. He will never stand on a stage or sit in an interview chair explaining his philosophy. His answers exist only in his mind, confined to a cell, measured in decades rather than moments. So when you think about justice, punishment, and morality, remember this. Execution ends a life. A whole life sentence creates a life designed as punishment. And for some, that is the most severe penalty a society can impose. Tell me in the comments, do you think Michael Swango deserved the death penalty? Or is a lifetime inside federal prison a fate worse than death? This is the reality behind a sentence people casually call mercy. So here is what I want to hear from you. Do you believe life without parole is truly the ultimate punishment for someone like Michael Swango? A man who poisoned the very people who trusted him with their lives? Or do you think the death penalty would have been a clearer form of justice? Do you feel he is suffering enough right now? Or did the system give him the gift of time that his victims never had? And what about the institutions that failed to stop him for years? Should hospitals and licensing boards be held responsible when their silence allows killers to keep working? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this deep dive into Swango's prison reality disturbed you, subscribe for more true crime stories that expose what happens after the headlines fade. Is this justice or something far more unsettling? Tell us what you think.